Hey, I'm Hallie, and tonight a dramatic escalation up and down the coast at some of the country's most elite universities. Look at this. You're seeing people flooding schools with signs, with tents, with flags, from Boston to the University of Chapel Hill, Columbia University, and then there on the bottom left, New Haven, that's Yale, where 50 people almost were arrested today in these pro-Palestinian demonstrations against the Israel-Hamas war. More than 100 arrested at Columbia so far. You're looking at some new video just into us. It's where classes today are going virtual. They're not even in class on campus in person. It is virtual to try to cool things down after nearly a week straight of protests.
So why this is so important is because we are able to openly express our beliefs in a space that is safe and welcoming.
It has turned into physical safety, right? I am concerned for my physical safety. I will not step on campus until something is done, until rules are actually enforced.
So what is being done about this? Right now, you've got NYPD monitoring outside campus. They can't actually get on unless there's a specific call. Remember, it's a private school. But the university's president, working to balance free speech and safety, she is facing new pressure now to step down, with donors furious, including Patriots owner and Columbia alum Robert Kraft. And now, late tonight, even President Biden talking about it.
Do you condemn the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses?
I condemn the anti-Semitic protests. That's why I've set up a program to deal with that. I also condemn those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians.
I want to bring in Rahima Ellis covering all the latest. And Rahima, this is making headlines coast to coast. Give us a sense of what it's like on the ground and what we can expect next.
It's tension here on the ground, quite honestly, Hallie. You saw some of the students there on the campus grounds. This fence behind me, which is one of the main entrances to Columbia University, it's been locked shut all day. And I think we've got some pictures to show you just a half a block from here at another entrance to the university. There's about 200 people there, protesters, and that number has doubled in size from what it was earlier this morning. And police are standing around. They are standing by, if you will, to make certain that this does not turn into something that's confrontational, that would be physical. And they explain why. Take a listen.
Absent exigency, absent some ongoing crime, we cannot just go on the Columbia campus as we see fit. It is up to the university to decide whether or not they want us on campus.
And they did want them on campus last week. More than 100 people were arrested because Columbia University officials felt that the protest had gotten out of hand. They called NYPD in on campus, and they did come in and they arrested some of the protesters. I want to share some more information. This is coming from the Anti-Defamation League about it wants to see the following things happen on campus. It says that they would like to invite NYPD or the National Guard on campus. That's what they would like Columbia authorities to do. And as I just mentioned, last week, Columbia people did. They want them to outlaw full-face masks on campus and enforce the rules, suspensions and arrests. We should say there have been some suspensions. And as I mentioned, there have been some arrests. Now, Columbia students, for their part, those for Justice for Palestine, they have a statement also. We wanted to put that up in a full screen for you. It says, "We firmly reject any form of hate or bigotry. We have been peaceful. We follow in the steps of the civil rights and anti-war movements in our quest for liberation." Some students now, however, Hallie, are saying they do not feel that this is all the time peaceful. A student that we talked to earlier today said they had water thrown in their face because it was clear that they were Jewish. In fact, they had come to express themselves as Jewish students, and they felt that they were attacked. And that, they say, can't continue. They don't want to go back on this campus. If they are fearful, they would run into more of that. Hallie?
Rahima, we talked about it, right? It is not just where you are here in New York at Columbia. It is a number of schools, these elite colleges and universities all across the country here. Based on your reporting, what might it take to try to cool the temperature down, to try to get things to a place where it is not at such a, as you have alluded to, boiling point?
It's the question that so many people are asking, and the answers that some are giving don't seem to be the answers that people want. As I mentioned, the university did call in NYPD on campus. There have been some arrests. There have been some suspensions. Here at Columbia University, earlier, they had also banned students from putting anti-Semitic messages on their college dormitory doors in an effort to cool the temperature down, to cool the vitriol down, if you will. But listen to this statement from the White House statement on what college presidents might do in order to make things peaceful. It says, well, every American has the right to a peaceful protest, calls for violence and physical intimidation targeting Jewish students and the Jewish community are blatantly anti-Semitic, unconscionable, and dangerous. They have absolutely no place on any college campus or anywhere in the United States. So in some measure, it seems that some college universities are trying to walk that delicate balance between how far do you go with free speech and then that trap or the falling from free speech into violence and something that causes people to be afraid. Hallie?
Rahema Ellis live for us here in New York. Rahema, thank you. Further south in Manhattan, a moment making history tonight. A witness under oath testifying in a criminal case against a former president. And David Pecker did it with a grin at some points, according to our colleagues in court. He's the former tabloid king who prosecutors say is at the heart of this so-called catch-and-kill scheme to suppress unflattering stories. Stories like, say, a Republican candidate for president denying an alleged affair with a former adult film star right before the election. A story that is front and center in these 34 felony counts Donald Trump faces of falsifying business records. And in just the last few hours, we're learning how both sides will lay out this case over the course of the next 5, 6, 7 weeks. Now, prosecutors say this goes beyond what we've all called the so-called hush money case, flipping a famous phrase of the former president on its head, calling these alleged crimes election fraud. They're also promising receipts, texts, emails, an Oval Office picture, Mr. Trump's voice on tape, all of this to try to make this case. Now, the defense, for its part, working to humanize the former president, saying he's also a father, a husband, dismissing these 34 counts as just 34 pieces of paper and saying there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy. Laura Jarrett and Vaughn Hilliard were both at court today. You have made your way, that trek up through Manhattan to here to 30 Rock. Laura, let me start with you, and let's set the table a little bit for tomorrow. We talked about David Pecker on the stand. Critical to this case. He's going to be back on the stand, if not first thing tomorrow morning, at least second thing. Walk us through the expectation.
He's a helpful witness for the prosecution because he does two things. He puts Trump in the room where it happened, where this alleged plot was first concocted to do what's known as catching and killing, where a tabloid buys the story of someone who had something bad to say about the former president and then makes them sign a non-disclosure agreement so they can't go to anybody else with their story. And it's that meeting, that fateful meeting in 2015 that actually puts Trump in the room, whereas otherwise prosecutors don't have him sort of directly involved in the scheme. It also allows them to have someone else besides Michael Cohen, because everybody knows Michael Cohen has issues on credibility. Both sides recognize that today, as I know we're going to get into. And so it allows them to have someone else. And so Pecker becomes that other person who's there for them.
But the defense obviously countering all of this, right? And you saw that from the former president's lead attorney today.
He literally told the jury, Donald Trump's lead attorney, Todd Blanche, you're going to hear salacious stories out of this courtroom. Stormy Daniels is going to testify, right, about having an alleged affair with Donald Trump.
Stuff, right?
Sex scandal.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. That's Donald Trump's attorney's message. What Donald Trump has been charged with is the falsification of business records. And Todd Blanche wants the jury to focus on those checks, those reimbursement checks, which he makes the case that Donald Trump, he just received invoices that were processed through the Trump Organization, and then he simply signed them. But they were not just reimbursement checks for Stormy Daniels. They were paying him for actual legitimate legal services because he wasn't working in the White House. He was working as his personal lawyer. And Donald Trump just assumed that that was the capacity that Michael Cohen was still working in. And you said it, humanizing him, trying to make sense of Donald Trump is larger than life, right? President of the United States. But this was something that he was too busy to be so focused on.
He's relatable. He's frugal. Why would he have paid all this money is the case that they're trying to make to Michael Cohen here, which brings us to the Cohen of it all, which I know we'll get into through the course of this trial, Laura. What's interesting is tonight Michael Cohen is coming out responding to what the former president's attorneys have to say, saying the facts will come out at the time of trial that contradicts Todd Blanche's, the attorney's, mischaracterizations of me. This is Not the first time we've heard from Michael Cohen about this case. It's not going to be the last time we've heard from Michael Cohen about this case. Talk us through that.
The question for this jury is going to be, did Cohen just decide to do this all on his own? Or did he get sort of a wink and a nod or even more explicit direction from his boss? He's testified before that Trump doesn't just sort of come out and say what he wants. He sort of does it through innuendo.
Talks around it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trump has maintained all along, Cohen just did this all on his own. He was my attorney, and he sort of did it again in court in the hallway today. Listen to this.
He represented a lot of people, but he puts in an invoice or whatever, a bill, and they pay it, they call it a legal expense. I got indicted for that.
The question has always been, why did they structure it the way they did? If this was all on the up and up and it was just legal expenses, why do it through this series of monthly reimbursement checks? Why call it legal expenses when, but at least by all accounts, it was more than just legal expenses? That's sort of the thing that they're going to have to contend with. And I was surprised that didn't come up today in opening statements.
Was there anything else that surprised you as you were there in court listening to this, Laura?
I thought Todd Blanche would make more of the fact that people passed on this case. It's something that Mr. Trump says over and over again.
He's allowed to talk about that, right? He's allowed to point that out to the jury.
There's nothing to stop him. And I thought he might bring it up. But I also think that he's trying to be careful in how many different defenses he throws against the wall here. And he's trying to have a sort of a cabined, very legal defense. And he'll let Mr. Trump make that argument in the court of public opinion.
You also had some thoughts on the timeline, I know, too. The idea that they were focusing on things that happened after former President Trump took office.
Yeah, well, because they have to. That's the part that, at least in prosecutors telling, is illegal, right? And so back in the day, when this first kind of came up, and Cohen pleads guilty to the campaign violation for actually making the payment, at that time, we see the former president references individual number one. And we all knew who individual number one was, because the whole scheme was that he was paying her off at Mr. Trump's direction. But at the time, the Justice Department couldn't prosecute him for that because he was the president at the time. And so as I was sitting there in court today, I thought about how if the Justice Department didn't have the policy of actually prosecuting the existing president, the case would be about a campaign violation, which everybody sort of is talking around, and sort of even the prosecutor today said this is election fraud. He's not charged with election fraud.
That's right.
He's not charged with any campaign violation. He's not even charged with conspiracy. And that's something that I think the defense is going to continue to exploit.
Anything for you that was surprising being there, Vaughn, as you're looking at the politics of this, as you're reporting on the Trump campaign?
For the first time to hear inside of that courtroom the statement made by prosecutors that they intend to show the jury that Donald Trump directed the payment of $130,000. Because if you go back to when Donald Trump was in the White House, the story didn't break until well into 2018, January 2018. And it was in April of 2018, Donald Trump said he had no idea about the $130,000.
It was like on the Air Force One, terrible audio. You don't have cameras in there, I don't think, or if it was a quick shot.
Right, he said it on Air Force One that he didn't know. And so now the prosecution is suggesting they have the testimony or the evidence that contradicts exactly what Donald Trump says, which brings into question the credibility of the defendant who we are less than 6 months away from another White House run.
50% of people in our new polling, though, believe that Donald Trump is being treated just like any other person would be in a court of law. Me, you, whoever.
It is something the prospective jurors said over and over again. And I wish I had tracked which one said he was getting a fair shake versus which ones actually got struck from the jury. But I never heard anyone during voir dire, during the questioning, the vetting of prospective jurors, say he's not getting a fair shake. Almost everyone said, I think I can be fair, notwithstanding what I may have said about him on social media, and he is getting a fair shake.
I hope the two of you don't have plans for like the next month and a half, because I think we'll be seeing each other
longer.
A fair amount after that. Laura, Vaughn, thank you both so much. It's great to see you here in New York. A lot more to get to tonight. Back home in Washington, we're learning right as we were coming on the air that TikTok is promising to do something on the legal front if this bill to maybe ban it in this country keeps on moving forward. This is according to some internal memos that our team is just getting our hands on from a source inside TikTok. Now, the thing is, there's a timeline on this. There is a clock ticking. This could happen soon, with the Senate voting on this bill as early as tomorrow. After that, it would go to the president's desk. He's already said he'd sign it. But if you are a TikTok lover, if you are freaking out about the thought that your app could disappear, hold up, because that is not actually the case. There's some other options here, right? Mainly what lawmakers in the White House are hoping happens is that the Chinese company that owns TikTok, the Chinese-based company, will just sell it. They'll spin it off, and they've got a few months to do it. Ryan Nobles is joining us now. It feels like we've been talking about the potential of a TikTok ban in the United States for months, if not years, and now here we are, just hours away, possibly from that point. Walk us through it.
Yeah, and Hallie, I think this is just kind of the inertia behind this issue that led to this point, and members of Congress seeking an opportunity here on the heels of this national security supplemental that had funding for a number of different things to add in this portion that would effectively ban TikTok if the parent company, ByteDance, doesn't sell it within 9 months to a year. You know, there were some real reservations on the Senate side about the timeline that the House bill initially had suggested, which was only 6 months. And as they were working through these negotiations on the broader supplemental, they got together with their Senate colleagues and said, what if we extended it to 9 months? And then the president can even offer a 90-day extension beyond that and send it to a year. That was enough to get the senators to sign off. They snuck it into this national security supplemental bill, and it's likely going to be passed and signed into law. And now TikTok and ByteDance are going to be faced with a serious question here, and that is, do we sell off or do we just pull out of the American market? It's not clear which way they intend to go, except it looks as though the first stage is going to be a legal challenge.
But I mean, listen, what's so interesting about this is the way that TikTok has, in recent weeks, really vociferously pulled out all the stops in trying to lobby against this. Not by saying, and I think people get this now, especially I think folks in our audience, not by being like, hey, go to us for like fun dances and like interesting sounds and whatever. Businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurs who are making a living off of TikTok, essentially, putting them front and center and saying, what are you going to do, strip them of their livelihoods? I mean, that is the heart of the pushback from TikTok here.
It is, and I have to say, in many ways, Hallie, their strategy, their public relations strategy, backfired. You know, they certainly have done kind of an aggressive push outside of the bounds of TikTok itself by running television ads and running ads in other spaces where non-TikTok users might be exposed to it. But they also aggressively went to the TikTok user itself and told the TikTok users to call their members of Congress and tell them not to vote for a bill. They even had an application in the app where you could automatically just press a button and it would call the lawmaker's phone number. But what they didn't do was arm their users with an understanding of the legislative process and specifically tell them how to lobby their member of Congress and what to ask for. Instead, many of these members of Congress were just inundated with phone calls. Some were given death threats. It really backfired in a big way. I've never seen a lobbying campaign backfire as big as that one did, and that's part of the reason we're in the situation we are.
Were members ticked off about it? Like when you had those conversations in the hallway, were people mad?
There were members angry. There were members that told us at the time, Hallie, that they were 50-50 on the bill, and this pushed them in the other direction. You know, there are, many members of Congress, particularly progressive Democrats, that are active users of TikTok, that use TikTok as a way to connect with their constituents. They understand the value and the love that Americans have for it.
Huge platform.
It's a huge platform. But the national security concerns just outweighed the benefits, they think, at this point, and they believe there needs to be a change.
Super quickly, because I think this came up last week a little bit, there was like discussion of this big foreign aid package, right? And then TikTok kind of got lumped into it here. Explain that piece of it, because now this TikTok piece may be moving forward.
Yeah, that's right. It's all now part of the same package.
That's
they
right.
were voted on in individual bills in the House, but they combined them all together once it left the House. So the senators, if they're voting for Ukraine funding and Israel funding, they're also voting for this TikTok divestiture and potential ban. So there's a very good chance it's going to pass here in the next couple days.
All right, Ryan, we'll see you tomorrow, I am sure, from back home in Washington. Thank you much, sir. Let's take you overseas, where a senior Israeli official today is resigning over intelligence failures surrounding the Hamas-led attack more than 6 months ago on Israel. We're talking about the intel chief of the Israeli Defense Forces, now the first senior official to step down over that initial attack. His resignation comes as the Israeli military faces more and more criticism, both at home and overseas, with the U.S. expected to put in place new sanctions on a unit of that Israeli military over alleged human rights abuses against Palestinians. Israeli leaders, perhaps unsurprisingly, have condemned those sanctions, including the Israeli prime minister, who said this is the height of absurdity and a moral low. Raf Sanchez is joining us now. And Raf, in so many ways, this gets at the heart, at least the resignation of this senior intelligence leader in the Israeli military, of what we talked about in the days and weeks after the initial Hamas terror attack on Israel, which is how could that have even happened in the first place? Israel said again and again, we will address that when the time is right. We will get to that when the time is right. But right now, they were focused on fighting back against Hamas. Now, here we are.
Hallie, October 7th was the single greatest intelligence failure in Israeli history, and the question remains unanswered. Who is responsible for it? You now have this very senior general, the head of the intelligence division, announcing he is resigning. This was a personally pained letter. He talked about how what happens then will haunt him day after day, night after night. But it is adding pressure to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu because it is kickstarting this conversation about accountability, about responsibility. And that is something that Netanyahu himself has not taken. He has promised that there will be a national commission, a little bit like the 9/11 Commission in the United States, that will look into what went wrong. But he hasn't said when that probe will start. He hasn't said when it will report. And he is facing consistent protests by demonstrators who are demanding early elections, saying that they have lost faith in this government. And right now you have a prime minister who really doesn't have many answers to give the public, except, as you said, hold on, we're fighting the war, and we'll address this on the other side.
With
Hallie.
this white-hot spotlight on the Israeli military now, Raf, you've got, of course, Israeli displeasure over the potential of these new sanctions now to be put on that military unit. How does that play into the possibility of some kind of a ceasefire, right? Some kind of a release of the remaining hostages that Hamas has that are being held in Gaza. What are the chances that happens now?
Those talks are in a really bad place, Hallie, and they have been for weeks now. There is no optimism on either side right now. And you're hearing Prime Minister Netanyahu say the only solution here is to ramp up the military pressure and hope that that forces Hamas to make concessions at the table. We are expecting in the next couple of days that the U.S. will impose sanctions on this battalion of the Israeli military. It is a battalion that has a long history of alleged human rights abuses, but the incident that has brought these sanctions crashing down happened in 2022 in the occupied West Bank. Soldiers from this unit tied up and gagged a 78-year-old Palestinian-American man. His name was Omar Assad. They left him on the side of the road, and before those soldiers left, they did untie him, but he was totally unresponsive. They left him there, and the next morning, he was found dead. Now, several officers from that unit were disciplined internally. Nobody has been prosecuted criminally, and now the U.S. is bringing sanctions against this unit. Hallie.
Raf Sanchez live for us tonight in Tel Aviv. Raf, thank you so much for being there and for your reporting. To Washington now, and President Biden facing some new pressure from the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea today, defending the country after the president appeared to imply that cannibals there may have eaten his uncle's body during World War II. The Prime Minister saying in a statement, President Biden's remarks may have been a slip of the tongue. However, my country does not deserve to be labeled as such. The president's comments coming at an event in Pennsylvania last week. He was talking about his uncle, a pilot in the Army Air Corps. Listen.
He got shot down in New Guinea, and they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
Aaron Gilchrist is joining us now. That implication there, this, cannibalism comment from President Biden, obviously offensive now to this ally.
Yeah, obviously. And we got this statement from the prime minister showing as much, saying that he took issue with that and he doesn't want his country to be labeled as a country of cannibals. And we reached out to the White House about this, and I've been talking to a White House official who responded by saying that the relationship between Papua New Guinea and the United States is strong and one that is growing, and there are economic activities between the two countries that are taking place that are strong. And this official didn't respond directly to this idea, this concern, really, that the president suggested that the people of this country were cannibals. But he did say that there is an effort, as the prime minister suggested there should be, to find, to recover, repatriate American service members who may have died during World War II on this island. This White House official saying to me that that is something that is a commitment of the United States, and that the nation of Papua New Guinea has been working with the U.S. to make that happen, that the U.S. appreciates those efforts and will continue to do so. We did do a little bit of research on this, Hallie. I'll say this, that there is some research that suggests that at one point in time there was a segment of the population of Papua New Guinea that engaged in something called transumption, which is really a spiritual ritual that did involve the consumption of relatives' bodies after death in a very spiritual, ritualistic sort of a way. There's no proof, though, and we looked at some of the military records related to President Biden's uncle. There's no proof that he did anything other than die in a plane crash. We know that his aircraft went down. He was a passenger on an aircraft that went down in the water off New Guinea, and that his body was never recovered. There's no proof, though, to suggest that anything else happened. Hallie?
Aaron Gilchrist live for us there outside the White House. Aaron, thank you. Lots more to come this hour, including some folks in Canada. Look at this. Seeing this rolling down the street. Yes, that is a train on fire, just like making its way downtown. We're going to take you there. Plus, your future may be female, while your life could depend on your doctor's gender. A new study out in literally just the last couple of minutes finds women in the hospital are less likely to die if their doctor is a woman. And a doctor's gender also impacts the rate at which people are readmitted, according to the research. Like, you're actually less likely to go back to the hospital if you're treated by a woman. In the U.S. today, just about 40% of active physicians are women. Still, obviously, the minority, but a shift could maybe point to some hope in closing that gap, because about 50% of residents now, doctors in training, are female. I want to get to Dr. Natalie Azar. So super interesting, right? I mean, the top line of this study, help us understand it. Why would it be that having a woman doctor might help women have better outcomes in the hospital?
So the study, it is interesting, Hallie, and it kind of comes on the heels of a lot of research over the last couple of years that does seem to show some gender differences in patient outcomes. And it should be noted that both men and women had a lower 30-day mortality and readmission rates if their doctors were physicians, but the benefit, if you will, or the protection was even more pronounced in female patients, as well as women who were sicker. You know, the study authors basically throw out three possibilities. One is communication, that that men probably don't communicate as well, and maybe they're not getting crucial information that is necessary for appropriate treatment. There's also the issue that male physicians perhaps underestimate a patient's symptom severity, and that could delay treatment. And then the last one kind of makes sense, that in issues where there's a more sensitive nature, maybe GYN issues, that female to female communication and care, actually could impact, outcome.
What about, we've heard for a while now about women, and specifically women of color, going in, raising issues with the doctor, and feeling like they weren't heard, feeling like they weren't believed when they talked about how they were feeling or whatever their health impacts were. Was that a part of this data?
They did not stratify the patients by race. The way this study was conducted was by combing through Medicare claims data. So they're looking at diagnosis codes, they're looking at male, female, and I was just combing through again the study to see whether or not there was any place where they actually could stratify also and look at this from a race-based perspective, because in addition to women, we know that minorities are also more likely to be misdiagnosed and have historically had an issue in the doctor's office, where they're not being heard, that kind of scenario, which we're all too familiar with. I think an important point, Hallie, is that this was inpatient data. This was hospitalists, taking care of patients in the hospital setting. This is not necessarily to generalizable to younger people or people in an outpatient setting. But if it does anything, I think it drives home the point that as a patient, you need to be sure that you are being heard, that you have a good communication, open lines of communication with your doc, because it is so important that you get the correct diagnosis to get you the right care that you need.
Dr. Natalie Azar, thank you so much. Appreciate you breaking that new study down for us. Thanks. One of the biggest Protestant groups in the country now reevaluating its future tonight. We're talking about the United Methodist Church, with leaders from around the world set to meet for the first time in nearly a decade tomorrow. This is a landmark moment for the church, and it comes after about a quarter of churches in the United States left the denomination over the course of the last few years because of disagreements about modernization, essentially. Right now, the United Methodist Church bans same-sex marriage and openly LGBTQ clergy, which has some members divided.
As Methodists, I was raised as a Methodist to believe that we all have a place at the table. Now, if you want to deny me my place at the table, then that's when we get into problem, and it begins to be problematic. We have got to contextualize how we do church so that the church can meet the needs, not just of us here in the United States, but of Methodists around the world.
I want to bring in Maura Barrett for more. She's been reporting this out. Talk us through it here, Maura.
Hallie, it's really difficult because you're seeing in real time the way that the church is splintering in response to social and political issues. And at the heart of it that they're talking about at this conference tomorrow is the fact that the church as a whole is shrinking intensely. That 25% that have left equals a little bit more than 7,000 churches just in the U.S. And therefore, that means that the budgets are decreasing a lot and they're not having enough space to pay and hire bishops, reverends, pastors. You look at the numbers, the way that that's dropping. That's issue number one for the church as a whole, and that's what they're going to be talking about. But then when you get to the heart of the issues that they're fighting about, there's the question of, do we accept LGBTQ congregants and clergy because we need this extra help building up the church? That's what you heard from Reverend Kimberly Scott there. She is a queer Black pastor who talks about being a minority in this church, but that it's a place where she's needed to feel accepted and wants to be part of the transformation and the change. Now, on the other hand, I also spoke with Pastor Glenn Hayward, also in California. His church is at odds over the inclusion of LGBTQ people in the church. They want to read a more conservative reading of the Bible and split off, but the church has made it hard to disaffiliate again in the financially. And I want you to hear a little bit from him on the fact that this splintering is very reminiscent of what they've seen in the church in the past, actually back around the time of the Civil War.
The mainline denominations all split before the North and South split and became a war. I hope that doesn't happen now, but it certainly is reflective of the cultural splits and the polarization in our culture between liberal and conservative.
So, Hallie, his church is trying to disaffiliate and go into the more conservative Global Methodist Church, which is a newer sect. But again, it really just reflects how the social political issues that we talk about day to day that are polarizing in the U.S. are trickling down into people's religions too, Hallie.
And the United Methodist Church is huge. I mean, we've talked about this, right? It's not just an American church. It's got people around the world who are participants.
Exactly. If you look at the numbers breakdown, there's about 12 million people across the world. Half are in the U.S., but the other half are international. That's Africa, the Philippines, other Eastern Asian countries that are more conservative. And so the big conversation they're going to be having at this conference tomorrow, that starts tomorrow and spans about 2 weeks, is how do you square the way that the U.S. is leaning more progressive, for example, but then these other countries are more conservative and they want to be able to have a home under this larger umbrella that is the church. And so it's a very fine line, a very hard needle to thread when they're answering these questions when this conference starts tomorrow, Hallie.
Maura Barrett, keeping an eye on all of it. Maura, thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, you got to look at this train with cars on fire just rolling through a city in Canada. Nobody got hurt, according to local fire officials, but they're still trying to figure out what in the world happened here. You see all this video. It apparently started after some wooden railway ties inside the train cars caught fire. That's obviously why you're seeing what you're seeing there. Number 2, Express, the clothing store, filing for bankruptcy today. Nearly 100 stores are set to shut down. The company says it filed for bankruptcy to facilitate a sale with an investor group and put them in a better position to make more money and to grow. Number 3, another death knell for DVDs. Target phasing out in-store DVD sales. Did you even know that they still sold them? Apparently they do, but now Target's going to transition DVDs to online only. They'll bring them back for special occasions like the holidays, so you got that going for you. Number 4, country star Morgan Wallen now responding after that arrest in Nashville we told you about, saying in his words he is not proud of his behavior and that he accepts responsibility. Remember, he's facing charges after police say he threw a chair off the roof of a 6-story bar earlier this month, almost hitting a couple of police officers who were on the ground. He is due in court next week. Number 5, a viral AI moment, calling into question the technology, what it can be used for, the future. Artificial intelligence. Microsoft just put this out. It's got nearly 7 million views. Look at it.
Truth from what I see and sell it to Perez Hilty.
Oh yes, folks, that's the Mona Lisa rapping. Microsoft says its new AI technology can take basically any image and audio, in this case, an old clip of Anne Hathaway, apparently, and turn it into like a semi-realistic looking video. So there's your nightmare fuel for the day. Coming up, how an alligator, this one, ended up blocking traffic on a tarmac. Plus, more questions than answers tonight about a scary explosion that nearly cost a woman her life. So the Supreme Court tonight looking like it's leaning toward a ruling in favor of a move that could basically make being homeless a crime if cities wanted that to be the case. This is super interesting, so let's break it down here. The justices were looking at a case today about some city ordinances out of Oregon. That's where officials are trying to ban people from camping on public property, which is why some justices are now asking the question, okay, well, if people experiencing homelessness cannot sleep in public places, where are they supposed to go?
Where do we put them if every city, every village, every town lacks compassion and passes a law identical to this? Where are they supposed to sleep? Are they supposed to kill themselves?
Provocative question there from, as you heard, Justice Sotomayor. Advocacy groups say bans like this one in Oregon violate the 8th Amendment, which protects against cruel and unusual punishment. Now, if the Supreme Court disagrees, this could have real implications all across the country, not just in Oregon, because obviously this is an issue that affects states well beyond Oregon's borders. Homelessness in this country shot up 12% last year, meaning some 650,000 people in a single night in America were living on the streets last year. Lawrence Hurley is joining us now. There's so much to this, right? Because there's this question that the justices are weighing of how to balance people's need for a place to exist, right, with the city's need to regulate public spaces. So which way does it seem the justices are leaning, if you're going to look at the tea leaves here, and imprecise art, to be sure?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed, based on the arguments, that the Conservative justices were skeptical of the idea of the court getting into the business of overseeing kind of homelessness policy. And we saw sort of arguments on both sides from justices across the divide, probing the arguments, you know, the kind of extreme versions of how this could play out on the ground if the court was to go one way or the other. So you heard Conservative justices saying, well, if we allow an 8th Amendment claim about sleeping on the sidewalk, does that mean that cities also can't enforce other types of ordinances that are used for public health purposes, like ones that bar urination in public because homeless people don't have anywhere else to go to the bathroom? And perhaps, you know, Justice Gorsuch even suggested that, you know, there might be a right to steal food if you didn't have access to food. So they were clearly skeptical of this idea that the 8th Amendment could apply here. But then the Liberal justices on the other side were saying, well, what if you criminalize sleeping outside, can you also criminalize breathing? And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson even suggested that, you know, if the 8th Amendment doesn't cover this type of thing, could the city just execute homeless people because, you know, there's no 8th Amendment claim there? So you could see on both sides probing this, and we can hear from Chief Justice John Roberts, who is saying, you know, the court just shouldn't be in the business of making policy on homelessness.
There's also, I mean, this is a case that drew some attention. We saw, and we often do.
Of course, is to build shelter, to provide shelter for those who are otherwise harmless. But municipalities have competing priorities. Why would you think that these 9 people are the best people to judge and weigh those policy judgments?
So that seems to be the nub of it from the Chief Justice, and I think some of the other conservatives, including Justice Brett Kavanaugh, feel the same way, which is the court just shouldn't be making this type of policy.
Lawrence Hurley, my apologies for stepping on the Chief Justice there, just pointing out that we saw people demonstrating outside court on this issue. It is getting a lot of attention, and we are going to wait to see what the justices decide, probably this term, right? I mean, we think by the end of June?
That's right, ruling by the end of June with all the big cases that are coming.
Lawrence Hurley, thank you so much, live for us back home in Washington.
Thank you.
NBC News covers hundreds of stories each day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest Bureau, look at these firefighters on the scene of this reported home explosion in Minnesota. You can see part of the home still smoking here. This window blown out, pieces of wood or whatever blown across the lawn. The whole thing looking almost flattened. The owner was rushed to the hospital after crews pulled her out from underneath. They were hearing her screaming for help. We don't know her condition nor what caused the explosion at this point, but it may have had something to do with natural gas, according to crews. Out of our Southern Bureau, take a look at this. Florida's Air Force Base getting maybe an unpleasant visit from a maybe unpleasant intruder, an alligator on the runway, just hanging out there right near the wheels of that plane. So you can see they kind of roped it, did a little tug of war with the gator before pulling it out. It's been relocated to a better space away, presumably from the jet fumes. And out of our Western Bureau, construction now starting on a $12 billion high-speed train line between Vegas and L.A. Brightline West says it'll transport 11 million passengers per year one way, and the price expected to be a lot cheaper than a flight. We've talked a lot about Brightline's Florida operations on this show. The company hopes to have its West Coast trains running in time for the Olympics in L.A. in 2028. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And on this Earth Day, we're taking it to the team of researchers looking to revolutionize the way we do our laundry. Why? Well, researchers say that the way we do our laundry can be filled with little tiny bits of plastic, these microplastics that can hurt both the environment and even us. Here's Erin McLaughlin.
What if I told you that scientists have found this in almost every part of your body?
What are called microplastics.
Microplastics.
Dangerous microplastics.
Those are microplastics, minuscule particles found in the gut, the blood, and the brain. Scientists say they clot arteries, linking them to heart disease and hormone disruption. But what exactly are microplastics? Imagine a plastic bottle thrown into the ocean. As it's tossed around by the waves, smashing into rocks, it breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces. The pieces you can see with the naked eye are microplastics. Those too small to see are nanoplastics.
The whole planet is penetrated by microplastics. It's in deepest points of the ocean. It's high on the mountains. You inhale it, you drink it, you eat it. It's everywhere.
All because humans generate an estimated 380 million tons of plastic waste every year. And even if you think you've cut out single-use plastics from your life, scientists say you're probably still contributing because of one everyday task: laundry. Each time you wash clothes made of plastic fibers like polyester or spandex, tiny pieces shed into the water system. Now scientists and engineers at Columbia University are tackling this source of pollution. According to one of the researchers, 1/3 of all microplastics pollution in the world's oceans can be traced back to laundry.
That's actually global in the ocean, but in the urban centers, they can reach to 80%.
80%?
Yes.
So Dr. Yan and his team are developing a device that can attach to a washer and filter out the plastics.
This is a new technology that's actually using these advanced filtrations to remove majority of the nanoplastic and microfibers and microplastics from your waste.
Dr. Yan's team showed us what the washer spits out when it does your laundry. Those bits floating around are plastic fibers from a polyester blanket. When they run it through the filters, the water is cleaned and the plastic fibers are left behind. And this would end up in the water?
This will end up in the water.
If not for your filter.
Exactly.
This is why laundry is such a huge problem.
Exactly, yeah.
But more worrying than those visible orange fibers are the ones that you can only see with a highly advanced microscope. That mass of what looks like gray pasta, those are tiny microplastics, some of them hundreds of times thinner than human hair, others even smaller.
This is about 8 times smaller than a blood cell. This is at 500 nanometers.
That means if ingested, these fibers and particles can cross the blood-brain barrier or even get into the placenta of a pregnant woman. We have no idea what they do.
Right.
Exactly. But it can't be good?
It can't be good. Yeah. I mean, we should just use common sense to think that we shouldn't be ingesting these types of particles.
The filter is still in its early stages, but the team hopes it could be on the market as soon as 2 years. A new solution to a health hazard we're just beginning to understand. Erin McLaughlin, NBC News.
When we come back, a celebrity friendship on the fritz. We'll tell you who Bex has beef with and why he's dragging him to court. Tonight, an A-list rift over a business deal gone bad. David Beckham now suing Mark Wahlberg's fitness company over a deal Beckham says he allegedly lost something like $11 million on. In a new lawsuit, Beckham accuses the company F45 Training, that's the company, of fraudulent conduct. He says he was misled into working with the company when he came on as a global ambassador. Wahlberg's part owner of F45 and the company's chief brand officer. And the two of them, Wahlberg and Beckham, they were pretty good friends. Maybe it seems until now. F45's hitting back, asking for the whole suit to be thrown out, but a judge said no dice. Chloe Malas is joining us now. Okay, so Chloe, what's interesting here? This is a business deal between two business people, but it is also two friends. So now the business seems to have gone south. What about the friendship?
This is why they say, Hallie, do not mix business and pleasure.
That's right.
David Beckham comes to California, right, because he's going to be playing soccer and he's doing all the things, and he moves into this celebrity neighborhood where one of his neighbors is Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark, and they strike up this friendship, and Mark's like, hey, come invest $10 million into this high-intensity workout franchise called F45 that was not started by Mark Wahlberg. It was started by Adam Gilchrist and Rob Deutsch, and it was actually started first in Australia. So David Beckham puts this money in, and now his company is actually suing Mark Wahlberg's companies. He's also suing the founders of F45 because he's saying, I held up my end of the deal in promoting F45 all over social, being a spokesperson essentially, and I lost all my money because the stocks that you guys gave me were worth nothing because the company hasn't been doing very well and the stocks tanked. And so Mark Wahlberg, though, is coming out saying in legal documents, we didn't dupe you. We didn't do anything, malicious here, that actually the blame should be focused inward. So it's getting pretty messy between the two of them.
It's also not the first time that F45, this company, has faced some kind of a lawsuit from a super big sports star.
Sure. Terrell Owens, T.O., he sued F45 saying that the company actually owed him over $700,000 for being a spokesperson and social media posts. And, where there's smoke, there's fire. And you now have this very public situation between David Beckham and Mark Wahlberg. You had Terrell Owens. I mean, F45 still exists. I mean, there are still franchises all over the place, but it's unclear how this is going to affect the business and if other celebrities and high-profile athletes, if they're going to come forward as well. But this is very messy, and clearly things didn't go well behind closed doors, and now it's this very public lawsuit.
Spilling open in a big way. Chloe Malas, thank you very much. Great to see you.
And obviously, I guess you saw that, they weren't at Victoria Beckham's birthday party over the weekend
But
together.
you know who was? The rest,
All the
rest of the Spice Girls. That's right. Had to get it in. Chloe, thank you so much. That does it for us for this hour. We've got a lot more coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.